Hello and welcome to Vampire the Masquerade Clans series, where I normally explain what clans are inside Vampire the Masquerade to people that may have never played it. And today we are entirely off topic because Baali aren't really a clan and they don't even exist in version 5 of the game, which is the newest version. They're more of a bloodline, but they play quite the role inside the history of Salubri, which was our previous video, who also play quite the role inside the history of Tremere. And by the way, Baali also intersect with Tremere a little bit. So they felt like something that I should actually explain before we continue and proceed with other clans. And by the way, Paradox have actually put some things that aren't clans as clans. For example, is being clanless a clan? Because if you say yes, then that's a clan, and that's precisely what Paradox seems to think that clanless are, considering that on their website, KTIF are advertised as part of clans. So we have quite a few topics to discuss that are gonna be a little bit confusing, starting from this one. So then, Baali are infernalists. That is the best way to describe them that I can imagine. By the way, that thing I cobbled together from like a Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines poster and just like the bloodline tag for Baali. So it's kind of like Baali wallpaper that we have at home sort of situation. Don't stare at it for too long. Anyway, infernalism bad. Okay? At least according to Vampire the Masquerade rules, infernalism bad. There is quite a lot of different stories as to how Baali came into existence. Not gonna discuss all of them. I'm gonna give you the one that's written inside the Moloch's character profile, I wanna say, because he has his own wiki page. But that's not necessarily the correct one. They have been seen as something that predated Gangrel, they have been seen as a split off from Salubri, but here is one version as to how Baali came into existence. Moloch, along with Nergal and another, were part of a tribe of infernalists that sacrificed humans into a well in the ground. An antediluvian, which is somebody that existed before the flood. Normally when somebody says antediluvian, they mean either second generation or like third generation vampire. Those are the ones that tend to like exist before the flood. Found them and in a rage and at the pettiness and smallness of their evil proceeded to slaughter the tribe. In order that some might remain to learn the antediluvians' lesson, he cast their bodies into their own well and let his own blood flow in after. The following night, after the antediluvian had left, Moloch, Nergal, and the other emerged from the well as vampires, the first of the Baali. And the other, it is very unclear what it is. It can be male, female, hermaphrodite, it can be a little slave boy, because once again, the stories as to how Baali started are like many. Almost every single different book about that mentioned Baali had like their own version of what exactly happened. So there isn't like one singular consensus. And in game terms, that is precisely how Baali like it. Like there's no singular point that they can be tracked down to. Just rumors, which is great! Anyway, the goals of a Baali are kind of complex and multifaceted. For example, Moloch and his brood kind of just wanted to use demons for their own power without summoning demons into the world. So they were kind of like the branch that just kind of wanted to amass power at kind of any means necessary, practically. There are Baali that commit evil shit in order to make sure that bigger evil does not wake up and consume the world. So there's technically Baali that are working against the end of the world by being evil and therefore feeding that evil towards the evil that's asleep. Like the old ones, the ancient ones, the demon ones, however you want to call them. So the more heinous shit Baali do, the more the asleep ones are satisfied and the less likely they are to rise. So that is like another reason why Baali can do the stuff that Baali do. And the third reason is very similar to, I don't know, guys, if you're gonna be aware of this, but like real life anti-cosmic Satanists, where effectively the goal is to destroy creation and bring in the end of the world through any means necessary. That is mostly how Baali are portrayed, and that's kind of why they really fit that evil non-player character, the boogeyman of the campaign vibe, where they often reside. In antiquity, some Baali managed to like function in the open, which is to say they posed as gods and they collected human sacrifices and they even like had like sacrificial pits, and that was all fine and good until it wasn't fine and good anymore. So they kind of started getting hunted down for that sort of behavior. Believe it or not, other vampires didn't quite like huge human sacrificial pits and the idea of the world ending. That just didn't vibe with others, so they kind of decided that Baali is definitely the thing to hate and united against them. So majority of Baali that do exist and that do function normally masquerade as other vampires inside vampire society, and a lot of them are upstanding and well-respected members of both the factions Camarilla and the Sabbat. There is even a rumor that a lot of Camarilla and Sabbat infighting happens because Baali will it so. Normally, they would love to hand over both factions to their demon masters. At the very least, there are Baali that would like to do that. But if they can't do that, then just getting the factions to self-destruct by fighting each other is also a good way to proceed. They're completely fine with that. So, anyway, secret infernalists inside factions, scary. See how they're like the perfect setup for a boogeyman inside the vampire world. Now, let's go to the kind of heinous shit that Baali do, and let's like start from their embraces, which is how you make a vampire, which is funnily enough, they're technically almost the only type of vampire that actually give the human a choice of whether or not they want to become a vampire, whether or not they want to die. Because remember like that creation story about how 3 people got thrown down a human sacrificial pit and the vampire just kind of spread their blood over them and then they rose vampires the next night? Well, you want a pit. You want it full of dead bodies or sometimes just organs, whichever you prefer. You want to inject one of the dead body's hearts or one of the organs of which you made the pit of with your blood. Then you would take the potential Baali initiate to the pit. You would drain them almost to the point of death and you would just push them in. If they're worthy, then they will somehow psychically find the right body that has the blood or the right organ that has the blood inside the organ pit, and they will bite into it to get a bit of vampire blood, and therefore they won't die, but they will die and be reborn into a vampire. There is like another way for Baali to turn others into Baali, which is like a ritual that you can perform on an already existing vampire, because yeah, Baali is like the only clan slash bloodline that can actually turn other clans or bloodlines into one of their own, which is kind of scary. If I remember the ritual, it requires like at least a few bowls of blood from the Baali, but then it also requires emptying the future initiate's blood into bowls as well until they're like at the point of death, and then through a ritual you combine that whole shit and force it back into their body together with an unclear spirit of some sort, but that is me going off my brain case. So that might be entirely incorrect, but what is correct and what you should remember is that, yeah, they can turn other clans into Baali, which is also probably a really scary premise for a vampire, that your clan can just be denied to you. Like, if we take clans to be classes and bloodlines for the most part to be like subclasses because they're normally offshoots from an existing class, sometimes it's just like a class that has fallen and that no longer has any kind of influence, and there's so few of them that we instead call them a bloodline. But imagine somebody like took your class in like a different game. Like, let's say you're a rogue, or you're a barbarian, or like you're a druid or something, and they have the power to forcefully turn your class into evil shit trademarked. Like, isn't that a scary premise? Yes, it is. That's why Baali make for great non-player characters. When it comes to player characters, it's kind of like playing against like everyone else a little bit. So unless you're running like a full Baali party, it gets weird. It definitely gets weird. Of course, that's like not the only heinous shit that they do. There's like different types of Baali, like the destroyers, who are often derived as mindless maniacs, the celestials that try to unravel the secrets of the cosmos, children of Enigma, who are trying to get the ultimate secrets of the universe, but there's also avatars of the swarm, and those are more alien Baali that try to function as a hive mind while also growing a lot of insects inside themselves. And it seems that you can't actually produce insects inside a vampire body because it is dead and it isn't rotting, so it isn't like a great place for maggots to hatch, for example, and turn into flies, because it's not gonna have anything to snack on through that nice transformation. So avatars of the swarm will often steal live humans and they will implant them with bugs in order to make them as like a bug breeding machine for like as long as they need them. So everywhere where they can shove bugs, they will shove bugs, including, butt, mouth, any other holes that they might find. The person that's the bug incubator kind of need to be alive until all the bugs hatch, but other than that, meh. So they will often get kind of force-fed a bit of vampire's blood to make them into a ghoul and to keep them alive, while also like force-fed maggots and other really fun shit. And because Baali are entirely taboo breaking, they can do it through intercourse, and they're not above alluring like some pretty odd people. Like, I do remember in one of the Baali's books, it was like a priest, and the Baali was like a boy. So the priest he was in for a not so nice surprise when he had stuck his you know what inside a hole full of bugs that then crawled through his you know what into his pee-pee sack. That's the best description that I can give. Anyway, as you can see, by game terms, Baali bad. So, weaknesses. Actually, before weaknesses, right. Baali mostly embrace people that are very intelligent, cunning, and like 99% of all Baali embraces tend to be people that were into a cult. Like, that is a pretty big factor. Also, Baali, I don't remember if I already said this, but Baali love masquerading as Tremere, or at least they did until the pyramid collapsed, mostly because, mage that does weird shit, when you're a infernalist that does weird magic shit, kind of go hand in hand. It's easy to just kind of disappear and hide in there. Anyway, weaknesses. In all editions, Baali can't handle or look upon objects of any faith. They must avert their gazes from such objects, and touching them burns their skin, akin to taking fire damage. And they also can't stand anyone that has like true faith. So if you're like really, really, really good Christian, you stand a lot of chances against Baali. For the abilities, they tend to get Obfuscate, which is invisibility, Presence, which is the look at me, look at how awesome I am, be mesmerized at my appearance sort of ability, and Daimonion, which is the Infernalist magic. Do I have anything else to say about Baali? Oh yeah, they do infight quite a bit, as you may imagine. Like, if one side of your bloodline wants to end the world and you're just here trying to do powerful shit, you can't really do powerful shit once the world has ended, so clashes happen. It happens, so Baali are not only the enemy of every other type of vampire, they're also the enemy of each other. Time for like a little bit of an off-topic rant. I am a Luciferian in real life, so I think there's some fondness from me in Baali just existing from that point, even though they're like unredeemable, like evil shit villain. But I still like to see it. And it's kind of a shame that Paradox vetoed Baali being in the newest edition. They said that it's not because they hate Baali, but it's because undisclosed reasons. But I don't really believe that. Just, guys, let yourself have an unapologetic villain. They do get kind of cartoony at times because their heinous shit just gets so edgy and over the top, but having like a cartoony heinous shit over the top villain is fun, and having your players be able, with the storyteller's permission, to sometimes play an infiltrator that goes against the group can be a fun dynamic. If the group is okay with it, if the storyteller's okay with it, because, otherwise being all cutthroat and engaging in PvP against other players is kind of dishonorable. I have had some campaigns playing as a Baali. Unfortunately, they had to end early because our storyteller got tired. And before that, we had a new player, and the new player didn't realize that you're not supposed to make yourself in the game, and they kind of got a bit upset with like some plot points, so there was a bit of drama there, but I had fun, and I would love to play Baali in some other game again. Sometimes heinous shit, when it doesn't actually affect anyone in real life, is just kind of fun. So what I'm trying to say is, Paradox, please bring back Baali. Don't give me bullshit that you vetoed it. Not because they're like super evil, I have nothing against that, but because for other undisclosed reasons. I like these guys. I like these guys existing, even though they're like unredeemable villains, and in real life I hold a very low opinion on anti-cosmic Satanists, especially considering that, promoting doing actions that are almost terrorist in nature in real life is... I think such things shouldn't exist, personally. But in the game, go at it. So I hope I kind of explained to you quickly why Baali bad. I hope you kind of have an understanding why Salubri waged like an open war against them. And I hope it kind of showed you where in the game they stand, and also showed that not all Baali have the exact same motivations. Like, the person that's all power is not gonna be the same as the person that's like, let's end the world! And it's also not gonna be the same as the person that's going, let's commit heinous shit so that the world doesn't end, even though that is definitely the logic of all logics. Anyway, when we come back, we're gonna be coming back to more regular clans and classes, the things that are more mainstream, the things that actually have carried through all editions and have not just died at version 5's doorstep. If you have any questions about what I was talking about because I didn't explain it quite well enough, there is a link to a Wikipedia page talking about Baali in the description down below, and also feel free to use the comment section to ask questions. I'll try to answer them. I'm obviously not a writer on Vampire the Masquerade, so it's not like I'm a demigod that knows everything there is about this game, but I try my best to answer it. I think I can explain it to a noob. I think I'm okay at explaining it to a noob. Stands to be verified by other people that. Anyway, if you like spirituality content or game content or this kind of content, please feel free to check out the rest of my channel because this is what I do here. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much, and thank you so much for watching for this long. I hope I'm gonna see you on my other videos, guys. And also, really thank you to my Patreon supporters. You allow me to play video games, and I really love that. And yeah, bye B for now.